Hello, everybody. Welcome back to A Cult of Misfits. I'm Matt Owens. Here's what's going down in today's episode. We're going to talk about my deep and intense love of biscuits and gravy. I want to talk about concentration camps. I want to talk about, more broadly, the concept of good versus evil and morality and ethics and seeing things from other people's perspectives that we may disagree with. And I also want to share with you some interesting people that I've been listening to on podcasts and on YouTube that you may find interesting as well. So before we get started, I just want to give a big shout out and a thank you to everybody who is supporting the dang podcast. Love you. I'm really enjoying interacting with you guys, and I'm thankful to everybody who's supported what I'm doing here, either by donating or by sharing my content on social media or sharing it with a fellow misfit when we talk about things of an esoteric nature or spirituality or the inner journey or 5D or Anunnaki or any of these things that I enjoy talking about. I'm learning that there's others out there like me that enjoy talking about the weird, crazy spiritual shit. So cheers to us, and thank you to everybody who's been supporting me. I love you and I appreciate you, and thank you for following my podcast on Spotify and YouTube and Apple Podcasts. I also am posting content regularly on Instagram. You can find A Cult of Misfits there, or on Twitter/X. So thank you to everybody for following my content. My numbers are going up, up, up. In a recent episode, I talked about the emerald tablets of Hermes Trismegistus. So if that sounds interesting to you, check that out. I talked about Hermeticism, the 7 principles of Hermeticism, and the Kybalion and what that is. I just have kind of felt led to talk about that, and it turns out you guys are interested in that as well. That episode is one of the highest viewed ones that I've made so far. So if those are topics that interest you, then I encourage you to reach out to me on any of the platforms, or down below I've posted information on how to reach me, my email address. Let me know if there are any topics or subjects that you find interesting that you would like me to look into or you'd like to hear my perspective on. I just sort of go with where I feel led, and I felt really led to talk about Hermes and the Egyptian god Thoth and the Emerald Tablets and Hermeticism, and you guys are really enjoying it. So I will continue down that path, but let me know if there's other things that you would find interesting that you want to have me talk about. Speaking of that, I'm enjoying these conversations about just spirituality and stuff in general, and esotericism, and, you know, the question of aliens and all of that fun stuff. And I'm sort of testing the waters here. For those of you that follow me regularly and are interested in these topics, would it be of interest to you to start like a monthly online Zoom meeting or something of that nature? I'm sort of feeling led to head in that direction and just sort of putting my feelers out and seeing if anybody else out there is interested in just gathering together. I'm trying to create a community here of just sort of like-minded people where we can just sit and talk about weird spiritual shit and not feel judged or, feel like the black sheep as I often do. And I've heard that others of you feel the same way. So I don't have any intention of recording it and putting it on the podcast. I just sort of am wanting it to be sort of a closed door situation, but anybody who wants to join can feel free to join. So if that sounds interesting to you, or you'd like to just get to know other people who are interested in these sort of things, and I have no agenda, I have no purpose other than I enjoy talking about this, and I'm trying to reach out to others and create a space where we can talk about such things. So I'm playing around with that idea. So let me know if that sounds good to you. And if it does, please reach out to me and let me know. And I will sort of get the ball rolling and set up some sort of a monthly meeting or something along those lines. So let's dive in here. I can't wait a minute longer because I've been thinking about biscuits and gravy, and I have a special place in my heart for biscuits and gravy. Now, for you UK listeners, hi, love you. Surely you understand that I'm not talking about your biscuits. I'm not talking about a dang cookie. Okay, why can't we all just call it a cookie? The world would be a better place if it's okay. It doesn't matter. We can all have different perspectives on what pastries are called. Okay, guys? I'm talking about like Southern fucking homemade from scratch biscuits and homemade fucking gravy, white gravy. I remember the first time I started hearing like the word gravy used by Italians for like marinara or Indian food, calling their sauce gravy. I can't do that. I'm sorry. It's called a sauce. It's not a gravy because the white gravy holds a special place in my heart, guys. So I had biscuits and gravy the other day, and it's always sort of a spiritual experience for me every time I have it. I was explaining this to one of my sisters recently, and she was just looking at me with scrunched eyebrows going, I don't understand your thing with biscuits and gravy, but to each their own, I suppose. So I made some biscuits and gravy, and it was a divine experience. And so I was savoring each bite, if I'm being honest with you. And I was thinking to myself as I'm sort of salivating a little bit now. I've got like a Pavlovian response just thinking about the biscuits. So I'm savoring every bite, and I thought to myself, what if this was the last time that I ever ate biscuits and gravy? Right? Because we do so many things. Like I saw online, like there was a last time that I went to Blockbuster Video and checked out a video, okay? I didn't realize it was the last time I was going to go to Blockbuster ever again in my life, but it turns out it was. And so I started applying that to things like biscuits and gravy. What if this is the last time for whatever reason? Let's say I die tomorrow, or the gravy train stops and the cosmic gravy train comes to a halt. And this is the last time I have biscuits and gravy. Well, I would want to savor that shit. I would want to mull it around in my, like a fine wine in my mouth, and savor the scent and the taste of the sausage and the taste of the gravy and the flaky biscuit and the butteriness of it and the pepper, and just sort of let it all really soak in, because if this is going to be the last time I was going to have it, if this is my last meal, I really want to enjoy it. And so often I would find myself, as many of you do as well, I'm sure, we're in this fast-paced society, and we got to eat quickly, and we are sort of in this mode of programming that doesn't allow us to sit down and enjoy a meal oftentimes. I used to work in restaurants forever, and you're just sort of taught to eat quickly. Like if you're hungry during the lunch rush or the dinner rush, when everybody, when it's a full house, and you're hungry, you don't have a 30-minute break to sort of like putz around. Like you need to run in the back as quick as you can and cram that sandwich into your face as quickly as you can, because you got tables that need refills and napkins and all that other shit, right? So for years, I was just so used to wolfing down my food like an animal and not savoring it, not tasting it, not enjoying it, not being appreciative or thankful for it. I just inhaled it and ran back out onto the floor to continue my shift. And so part of this meditation practice over the years that I've been doing is reminding myself to slow down and to just stay in the moment, stay in the now, and enjoy and savor everything, including food, right? Because I have such a love of food, even though I wolf it down. And so I was definitely doing that with my biscuits and gravy. I was slowing down. I was being thankful. Did it bring me to tears? I don't know. Maybe it did, guys. Okay, don't judge me. Like I really get emotional thinking. I get really emotional at the biscuits and gravy, okay? So just, I thought that story would be good just as a reminder. It's good to remind myself too, to just be in the now, be in the moment. Oftentimes when I'm inhaling a meal, I'm often thinking about the next meal. Like, okay, what are we doing for dinner? Like that lunch was amazing, but like, what's for dinner? Rather than like, just enjoying the current dang meal. So I've got a tattoo on my left arm that is of Abraham Lincoln. It's sort of one of his famous poses, famous portraits. But instead of his face, I had the tattoo artist make it a skull with a little mole on the skull so that it's obvious that it's Abraham Lincoln. So I've got like a skull dead Abraham Lincoln. I've always kind of had this weird obsession about Abraham Lincoln. When I was a teenager, I read every book I could find about him, every biography about him. In fact, I was just watching, there's a new show on, I think, one of the streaming services. I get them all confused, honestly. They all jumble together. But on one of them, it's called Manhunt, and it's about the days after the assassination of Abe Lincoln, and it follows John Wilkes Booth when he's on the run from the authorities and his cohorts that are sort of helping him along the way, his Confederate brothers that are helping him after the war. And it's very interesting because there's a lot of movies out there about Lincoln and Lincoln's life, but nobody ever talks about the story of John Wilkes Booth. So it was really interesting, called Manhunt, and seeing it from a different perspective, right? Nobody really ever thinks about what happened to Booth. I mean, granted, he's considered a bad guy, but that's exactly what we're going to talk about in today's episode is, what is good, what is bad, what is evil, what is moral. So it all sort of ties together. Everything is one. So check that out. I thought it was well done, and I think they're still making new episodes, so the season isn't even over yet, but check that out if you're interested. But on my tattoo, I have it written on my Lincoln tattoo. It says memento mori, which is Latin for essentially remember that you must die. And I felt led and motivated to do that tattoo as a reminder that life is short. For me, it's a constant reminder every time I see it to live in the moment. Like I could be dead tomorrow, right? And so to savor each and every bite of biscuits and gravy is what I'm getting at, right? To savor everything because it's all fleeting. Nothing lasts forever. This lifetime is a blink of an eye, according to everybody, right? And so, just a reminder, cheers to biscuits and gravy is what I'm getting at here. So let's talk about concentration camps, morality, ethics, sort of dive into the bulk of what I want to talk about today. What prompted this is I was listening to this guy who I'd never heard of before. His name is Alex O'Connor. He's a philosopher, and he was talking about morality and good versus evil, and he said something really interesting. He had a very interesting perspective on it. He was saying that these concepts of good, quote unquote, evil or bad, are simply just an emotion expressing itself. And I thought, I've never really thought about it that way before, but I can see where you're going there, buddy. He said that they're just emotional preferences. When you say something is good or say something is evil or moral, that it's just it's an expression of your own emotions at that particular time. So I thought that was a really interesting way to look at it. The ancient Gnosticism, by the way, is just sort of a modern scholarly term for early Christians, just sort of these early belief systems. So when I say Gnostics or Gnosticism, that's what that means, is these early Christian beliefs around 100 AD. That sort of existed until Christianity sort of became the state religion for the Roman Empire, and they decided which books were going to go into the Bible, which books were going to be left out of the Bible. And so Gnosticism is just sort of this umbrella term for everybody that sort of followed a similar path to Christianity, but is sort of branched off early on in the game, okay? So these Gnostics talk about how everything is a spectrum, that I talked about these 7 principles or laws of Hermeticism, and that's one of them, is that everything is a spectrum. There is no good or evil. There is no hot or cold. There is just a spectrum of temperature, or there is a spectrum of morality. And so there's this concept that good and evil are just a matter of perspective, that what you perceive as being good and moral, I may not see it that way, right? And it might even take it to the extreme. I might call that immoral. And so I've always, in questioning everything, I questioned the Bible. I grew up in a Christian household, and questioning like, okay, these are all laws and moral beliefs, but according to who? According to the Bible? Okay. According to God? Maybe. These guys over here, they say that their God says something different. So like, who am I supposed to listen to? Who's right here and who's wrong here? Obviously, I'm not the first person to be talking about these sorts of things, but putting the concept that good and evil are just a matter of perspective is a really interesting way to shift my own perspective. Because I had always seen things in a very black and white manner, as I know many humans do, perhaps you do. And I've learned to try to shift that, to try to break free from that polarity, from that duality, from that, binary way of looking at things. Either we're programmed to believe that, those are the bad guys, we are the good guys. We are the good and moral ones. They're the evil, demonic ones, or whatever you want to say, right? But I also find it so interesting that the bad guys never consider themselves bad guys, right? The example I always use is Darth Vader never thinks that he's the bad guy. Hitler did not consider himself the bad guy. So I was watching this movie called Zone of Interest. It's about a concentration camp. It's about Auschwitz. And it sort of answered some questions that I had when I had visited a concentration camp in southern Germany, in Bavaria, called Dachau. And when I visited Dachau, I saw that right around the perimeter of the entire concentration camp was a bunch of just suburban-looking neighborhoods. It was just like regular, normal-looking houses, like right on the other side of this big wall that was housing all of these, prisoners, right? And so I asked the tour guide, like, who lived over there? And he said, oh, just regular people. And I said, like, did they know what was going on in here? And he was like, oh, yeah, they all knew. And I said, they were like, wait, what? It totally, like, my mind couldn't wrap around what I was hearing. And so then fast forward to this week when I watched this movie called Zone of Interest about Auschwitz. It was telling the story of the people who lived in those houses, which I'll explain to you now. The people who had lived in those houses were the soldiers, right? And the soldiers and their families. So this movie, Zone of Interest, focuses on a German family. The movie opens up with just this normal-looking family. They're just sort of playing in the river in the summertime and playing in the backyard and, laughing with the dog and, tending to the little baby. And some of the women were in the kitchen just chatting, having some coffee, and just this real normal 1940s German family, right? And as the movie unfolds, you start to realize where they're living, that on the other side of this wall in their backyard, as they're just having barbecues and playing, in the pool in the backyard with the kids' birthday party and stuff, like everything is normal. On the other side of the wall, there's like screaming and there's sounds of like gunfire and soldiers killing people and like these horrendous sounds that are coming on the other side of the wall. And here these people are just, living their life, just having a barbecue with their friends. And I find that very interesting that they were able to sort of ignore that, right? And to look past that. I know that I was listening to something that I was watching some YouTube video with Larry King, and he was interviewing somebody, and he was saying, well, surely we can all agree that Hitler was evil. They were talking about the nature of good versus evil. And Larry King said, well, of course, everybody agrees that Hitler is evil, which I believe is a very common way to view it, right? And I'm not pro Hitler when I'm talking about this. We're just having a philosophical conversation here. I'm not promoting Nazism or any of those things, just for the record. But I just like to look at these things philosophically and in an open-minded way without allowing myself to get attached to any of these things. It's just about having an intellectual conversation, right? And so everybody thinks that Hitler is this symbol of evil. But the truth is he did not view himself that way, of course. Those within the Nazi Party did not view him that way, of course. There were lots of people in the Nazi Party, right? They all agreed with what he was doing, otherwise they wouldn't have followed him. Now, of course, there was a lot of coercion and fear, and if you didn't align with what the party told you, there were consequences for that. Like, I fully understand the situation. But the truth is that there is a large segment of the German population that agreed with what the Nazi Party was doing. And when you start looking into these things and looking into it a little bit deeper rather than just these surface things like, oh, they're evil, they're bad. But the truth is that there's a portion of the population that did agree with what their policies were, or at least they were indifferent to them, right? It's the same thing with today. Not everybody agrees with the current administration, but a lot of people do, half the people do. And so I tried to get a number as to what percentage of the German population were behind the Nazi Party, and it's hard to estimate that. Some estimates say either a third or even up to a half of the population agreed with Hitler and his policies, but how much of that was influenced by propaganda and influenced by fear and, you had to do what the party says, otherwise you get in trouble, that sort of thing. So how many of them were actually legitimately on board? But what you have to understand is that the reason that Hitler rose to the power, one of many reasons, it's complicated, right? But one of the things that he did was he came on a platform of bringing Germany to a golden age. They had been completely decimated during World War I, economically and otherwise, right? What am I trying to say? Anyway, they were decimated right after World War I. And so Hitler came into power by saying we need to reclaim our former German glory, right? We need to come back to the good old days, and we got to start cracking the whip around here, and everybody who's on board with me, let's do this thing. And so that's sort of what started this movement of his, is reclaiming the motherland and bringing it back to the glory age, right? According to him and those people that were on board with his policies. And so when you start to think about it on a level like that, you're like, okay, fine. I guess I can see why people would be on board with that. It's that concept of like make America great again that Trump is pronouncing, and I'm not comparing Trump to Hitler, although I'm sure many do, right? But it's just this idea of reclaiming what we once were, our former glory, the good old US of A, right? Like who we used to be back in the good old days. And so it's really easy to get swept up in that sort of sentimentality of like, yeah, I want things to go back to the way they were. I want to go back to the good old days. That sounds really good, actually. And I find it interesting just from a sociological standpoint of how, a lot of people, when we reach a certain age, we want to just revert back to the good old days. So I find that interesting, right? That progress has to still push through, but often we have nostalgia for the way that things were, right? Rather than embracing a different or a new path, but that's a different conversation. So he was set on uniting everybody, and he definitely thought that he was doing what was in the best interest of his country, arguably what was in the best interest for him and his cronies within the party. That's, of course, what happens in any sort of a totalitarian governmental situation, right? Or a dictator or anything along those lines. Is that it's really easy to latch on to that power, right? Power becomes very intoxicating, obviously. And so it's really hard to, I should say it's really easy to label these people as evil or immoral or unethical. But of course, that's just comparing it to your own personal perspective on things, right? Your own stories that you've heard or created in your own mind that you've chosen to believe. That doesn't mean that they're right. And so while I believe that he was doing what he felt was in the best interest, I also start to put that lens of perspective, seeing things from another perspective, on people like the deep state, or people like Bill Gates, or, the people that are slurping up that adrenochrome, right? Those people are evil. Those people are demonic. Those people are immoral at best and demons at worst. There's something, those are the bad guys. Those people that are trying to control us and have power over us and poison us with all the things, poisoning our food supply and poisoning our waters and with plastics and the chemicals and the pharmaceutical companies and what am I trying to think of? The shit that they spray in the skies, how they're all trying to kill us, right? Those are the bad guys. But then a few years ago, I started thinking about it, because I definitely agreed with all of that. And I got into a place where I was blaming those people. Those are the bad people. They're the ones that are keeping us from humanity reaching a higher consciousness level or reaching 5D, or they're the ones that are keeping us chained up or enslaved, which goes in with the ancient narratives that were told in Mesopotamian tales of how we're slaves. Those people have enslaved us, those aliens, the Anunnaki. And so I realized that it was putting me into a place of victimhood, to constantly be blaming the deep state or blaming this group or that group for the ills of society, right? And then I started thinking about it from Bill Gates' perspective, and people like him, the people like Klaus Schwab or any of these types of people who are easily labeled as evil or bad guys, right? But I can tell you one thing, that if I had the amount of money and resources that some of these men have, like Bill Gates or Klaus Schwab or whatever, and I believed that the earth was overpopulated, I had a strong belief that it was overpopulated, and I had a strong belief that I knew things that the main population, the peasants, the idiots, don't know about. I can see things from my perspective because I'm a rich and powerful man. I would definitely try to do what I could to push that agenda, right? I can just see that from his perspective, that if somebody like Bill Gates definitely believes that there are too many people on the planet and he was in a position to do something about that, then I can understand why he would do something about that. Without labeling him as good, bad, just indifferent, right? If I believe in reincarnation, which I do, and I believe that perhaps I can pop into any body that I want, right? Like a Bill Gates or a Hitler or something, then theoretically, if we are all one, then that is divinity experiencing all aspects of humanity, the good, the bad, the ugly, and everything in between, because those are all just human perspectives. I don't believe that spirit sees things from that perspective. Spirit is not labeling things as good or bad or moral or immoral. I know what the Bible says. I know that other people have different perspectives. This is just my perspective. And I'm not trying to cram it down anyone's throat. Take it or leave it. But I believe the universe, this God that we can't really comprehend, is not judging our actions. I don't believe that there is love and judgment. And so I don't believe that a being that is comprised of love and light is judging itself, which is to say our spirits in this 3D realm. And so I believe divinity, our souls, want to experience what it's like to be a Hitler as well as what it's like to be a Mother Teresa or whatever. Right? A sinner and a saint. Because all things are creations of the all that is. And I believe that it's the humans, the emotions expressing themselves that create these judgments of good and judgments of evil. Because I believe this Christ energy, this higher energy of love, speaks about loving our enemies, loving those who persecute us. That's what Jesus was yapping about all the time. And nobody listened to him, right? It's easy to hear love your enemies. It's harder to put it into practice. And that's why most people don't do that. It's so hard to love our enemies. I can't remember ever hearing one spiritual teacher or anybody within the spiritual community talking about having any sort of love at all for Bill Gates or the Clintons or the sex traffickers or whoever it is they perceive to be the bad guy. Don't you find that interesting? I listened to a lot of those videos for a long time, and not one of them says love our enemies. Not one of them was loving their enemies, right? Even those of religious faiths have a hard time not loving, of loving their enemies. It's very difficult, and we don't talk about it enough. I believe Christ would directly ask of us, can you find love in your heart for this person that you perceive as bad or evil or immoral? Whether it's Hitler or Alex Jones or Donald Trump or any of these people that are bad, The deep state. Can you find love in your heart for the deep state? Ooh-wee! That's a good one. Can you find love in your heart for the deep state? That's a hard one. Right? That's a hard one. But that's what Christ is asking of us in the Bible, and I believe that that's what's being asked from us from the divine, is to find love in our hearts for all of those that have done us wrong. Whether it's the deep state or your parents or a family member or a teacher or a boss, somebody who did you wrong, can you find love in your heart for them? Can you forgive your ex? Can you forgive the person who caused this trauma in your life? Holy cow, it's hard. Right? Super hard. But I found that once I started reframing these things and how I looked at them and how I viewed and judged people like Bill Gates or whatever, once I could start seeing things from their perspective, it was like, okay, I'm not so mad at them because I get, like, if I were in their position, I might do the same thing, right? Like, I get it. It's so difficult, right? Seeing things like the abortion debate. Realizing that a fundamentalist Christian will get very upset about the idea of abortion because they genuinely believe that it's killing a life. They genuinely believe that it's a living being in there, not just a clump of cells. They believe that it is a living being, a child of God, and it's an abomination to destroy that life. And it's not about agreeing with them or disagreeing with them, right? Recognizing that that's just a perspective. And if I leave my emotions out of it and just look at it intellectually, can I at least understand why they think that way? And the answer, of course, is, okay, fine, yes. Yes, I get it. I get why they believe that that's a life. I don't agree with it, but okay, I can see that. Right? And when you start thinking about stuff like this, it starts to melt away all of those, barriers that we have. That the person who is pro-abortion believes that it's just a clump of cells. What's the big deal? You don't have to agree with that perspective. But at least you can say like, yeah, okay, I see why you say that. Sure. But I disagree, right? I feel like we used to be able to have that dichotomy, that difference of opinion, and say, well, that's all right. We can both have different opinions. We don't have to hate each other over it. Right? That's what these conversations are about. Recognizing that there is no good and evil. Recognizing that some people believe there is good and evil and understanding why they think that. I get why people think that. I'm not saying they're wrong. That's what this whole thing is about. I'm not saying that people who believe in morality or ethics or that definitely is evil, I don't care what you say about it. That's fine. I get why you say that. I'm not here to convince you I'm right. I'm not here to tell you you're wrong. We're just having a great conversation, aren't we? I found that people in my life who really enjoy having a debate, who love really like, yeah, well, what do you think about this? And laying down your arguments and trying to break down my arguments and show me why I'm wrong. People like that don't enjoy talking to me anymore. I found that they don't like having these debates with me because I have nothing to talk about. I'm interested in hearing your perspective, but I'm not interested in a debate with you. Because a debate is me trying to convince you that you're wrong. It's trying to show you in an intelligent way that I'm smarter than you, I have better sources than you, that here's the reasons why I'm right and you're wrong. And I'm not interested in having that conversation with anybody anymore. I used to love a good debate. I used to love getting all the facts and the figures and the sources and the citations. And I'm gonna take you to town, my friend. I'm gonna teach you a thing or two. I'm gonna bring you on board. I'm gonna show you why you're wrong, and I'm gonna show you the right way, my way. And I realized that was just my ego. I call my ego Hal. That was just Hal talking, right? Hal trying to control everything, trying to control other people, trying to bring their perspective over to mine, right? Trying to convince them, trying to control them. But when I release that control, when I release the need to shake my fist in victimhood, or release the need to show somebody why their beliefs are wrong, right? Why do I have to convince somebody that wearing a surgical mask will not prevent COVID? I used to feel the need to tell lots of people about the efficiency of masks. I talked about it quite a bit. I was real worked up about it because I knew what was true. I knew what was right. I have to convince everyone. And I got a lot of pushback. Turns out people don't like to hear that sort of thing. People want to hear what they want to hear, and that's that. And so I had to sort of unravel that for myself and just sort of be willing and able to let that go. Can I let it go, trying to convince people about the efficiency of masks or the shot or whatever you want to talk about? Can I let go of trying to convince people of that? And the answer was, maybe. It's going to be hard. And it was. But slowly over time, I have been releasing that. And it feels so good. It feels so free. I'm all about freedom all the time. And it's quite a burden on my shoulders all the time trying to convince everybody that I'm right and you're wrong. What a burden. It would keep me up at night. Right? It would really stress me out trying to comment on other people's things on social media and get in these arguments online and these comment threads, and I got lost. I got lost in it. And there was no love in my actions. There was a lot of fear and anxiety and worry and anger and frustration. None of those were loving actions or beliefs or feelings. And so it just sort of felt good to let those go. Why do I have to convince anybody what the pharmaceutical industry is doing? There are people who already know, and the people that don't know, when they're ready to awaken to that information, they will awaken to it at the right time. Right? They're not going to listen to me ranting and raving about the deep state or big pharma or big media or big tech or any of these bad guys, right? Because I no longer view them as bad guys. In a recent conversation with Nathan in a previous episode, if you want to check it out, we were talking about this sort of thing. And he was talking about how he doesn't believe that there is some sort of an evil cabal or reptilians or anything that are secretly running the earth. He said that it's just people that are genuinely trying to do what they think is right, or just humans that are, in power and greedy. Right? Or trying to manipulate other people for their own benefit. Right? So that's all I have to say about that, is anytime I start getting into this idea of morality and good versus evil, I just think about perspective and how it would do us a lot of good, did me a lot of good, letting go of my pretenses and being open and willing to hear other perspectives, even if I thought that they were batshit crazy. I can hear somebody's perspective and not have to attach to it, right? I don't have to believe that the earth is flat. I don't have to believe that the moon landing was faked, right? But I definitely want to hear why you think that, and then I'll come to my own conclusion. Right? Let me hear your thoughts on abortion, even though you think differently than I do. I can't tell you the amount of times I've made an assumption about somebody, and then upon further questioning, I'm like, wow, that they did not have the perspective that I thought they would. I assumed because they're a Republican, or I assume because they're a Democrat, or I assume because they're a woman, or I assume because they're black, or I assume because they're whatever, that they're going to answer a certain way, and then they don't. They surprise me. And I'm like, oh, turns out I had some preconceived notions about you, friend. And I'm thankful to the universe for those interactions, because it gives me another opportunity to hear another perspective and become more open-minded. And it's more practice of non-attachment. I don't have to attach to it. Yeah, that's an interesting perspective. I disagree with it. Have a good day. It doesn't have to go beyond that. I don't like people telling me what to do. That's the whole thing. I don't like people telling me what to do. I have such a problem with authority. I don't like, whether it's the government or my parents or a teacher or whatever, a boss. I don't want people telling me what to do. And so when I sort of was going through this spiritual awakening, it's all new to me, dark night of the soul, feeling lost and confused and frustrated and scared and shedding of all these layers and going within and crying my eyes out and, feeling these emotions, digging deeper into my psyche than I've ever dug before and looking into why I respond this way, all of the work, the great work, right? I would follow many people online who are in the spiritual community who are perhaps a little further along on the path than I was, and I was seeking answers. I wanted people ultimately to tell me what to do. I'm feeling frustrated, tell me how to deal with that. I'm feeling scared, tell me how to deal with that. I don't know how to meditate. Tell me what to do, right? I wanted people to tell me because that's part of the programming as well. We're often programmed just as human beings. Many of us want to be told what to do. Most humans want to be told what to do by their government. They want to follow the rules. They want to stay in line. They want to do what everybody else is doing so that they don't stand out, that they aren't ostracized, that they aren't expelled from their communities through mockery or whatever. So there's a lot of incentive for the human being to conform, right? It's entwined in our DNA and our programming to conform to society. Because if you don't, you're exiled and then you're on your own and you're doomed. That's scary. That goes against the reptilian programming part of our minds, right? And so I spent a lot of time looking for answers from a lot of these spiritual gurus and spiritual teachers and mentors and life coaches. I was thirsty for anything and everything that would just sort of point me in the right direction, because I felt listless and lost and confused, and everything that I thought was not, everything how I thought the world operated was not, and everything I thought about Christianity and concepts of God and heaven and all of this was now all out the window, and everything is on the table and off the table. It was a very confusing time. And so I went back to my programming of just tell me what to believe. Tell me what's the truth. Okay, you've astral projected before? Okay, great. I'm going to write down everything you tell me about the astral realm, and I'm going to take it for gospel, I'm going to take it for truth, and I'm going to live my life that way because you're smarter than me. You seem more spiritual than me, so I'm going to follow what you say. This is the same trap that all of Jesus' disciples came into. He kept saying in the early Gnostic scriptures that were left out of the Bible, he often said, stop following me. I'm not, it's all within you, right? Don't worship me. I'm not more spiritual than any of you. I am the teacher as well as the master, right? It's this duality, this simultaneousness of ascension, right? And so oftentimes he said, don't listen to me for answers. You have all of these answers within yourself. And so many times I heard that, but didn't fully understand it or let it fully integrate into my journey, that I often was just looking for people to tell me what to do. I would often struggle with addiction, for example, and smoking too much weed or cigarettes or drinking too much or whatever. And I remember one time asking a fairly well-known spiritual guy that everybody follows on Instagram. And I remember I went on a live with him one time, and I asked him for help with, I think I'm smoking too much weed. I feel like I'm imbalanced. Just tell me what I should do. Right? And really what I'm doing there is I'm giving away my power. I talked in a previous episode about giving away your authority, your sovereignty to other people. And so that's what I was doing, not knowing it at the time, is giving away my power to this spiritual guy who I perceived as being smarter than me or more spiritual than me. And to just not only give me the answers, but just tell me what to do. Should I stop smoking? Should I not stop smoking? Is it okay if I smoke? Just tell me what's right and tell me what's wrong, and I'll just do it. And I don't even remember what his answer was. It was basically saying, I can't give you all the answers, but find balance in it, and maybe it is best to quit smoking or something. So I was like, okay, he told me to quit, so I'm going to quit. Without consulting my intuition, without consulting my omega, my higher self, or God, or the universe, I just sort of was looking for answers anywhere but within, because I didn't know how to do that. I didn't know how to sit and contemplate. I didn't know how to sit quietly and let the answers come to me, to let spirit talk to me. My mind was constantly nervous and scared, trying to find the right path, find the right path, find the right path. Gotta ascend, gotta ascend, gotta ascend. Gotta do the spiritual work. That's part of the programming as well. Always being in this mode of work. Going back to the Dachau concentration camp that I visited in Germany, there's a giant sign over the entrance to the concentration camp that says in German, "Work will set you free." It was lulling these prisoners as they came in to this false sense of security that, hey, if you work hard enough, eventually you can gain freedom from this place. But of course, that never happened. They killed them all, right? And so I always found that very interesting, that work will set you free. And so we have this belief as humans that if we work, constantly grind, that we'll somehow find freedom in that. And for myself, I never fully resonated with that idea, right? Of just constantly grinding at my dead-end job, working 40, 50, 60, 70 hours until my knuckles bled just to put food on the table and to live some sort of semblance of a happy life, so that someday I can retire and maybe enjoy life a little bit and then die. That seemed terrible to me. And so I started finding this place, working with spirit and the universe and within my own heart, finding this freedom, whatever that means for me. And that's the path that I'm on now, is finding what that freedom means. Not wanting to play that game anymore of grind, right? There's this Eastern philosophy of doing nothing, right? Of just going with the flow, of just letting everything be, just simply being the observer. None of those concepts talk about grind, work, roll up your sleeves, here we go. And it's not to say there aren't periods of that, but when that becomes your whole spiritual life, that's exhausting. When that becomes your daily work life, that's exhausting. And I've done that before. Just living paycheck to paycheck, just getting enough to get by. I didn't want to play that game anymore. In real life or in my spiritual life. Got to meditate more, got to get out into nature more, got to go. Never taking a break, right? It's okay to not be in gnosis mode all the time, 24/7. I get burnout all the time, diving into these deep esoteric topics and listening to these scholars talking, using words and terminology that's over my head oftentimes, or these particle physicists, or just these scientists that are beyond my capabilities that I just am like taking notes on. I've found that I don't listen to these spiritual teachers as much anymore. I don't listen to these gurus and guides as much anymore as I am listening to these podcasts from philosophers, right? Just to hear what their perspective is. Because the philosopher is often not telling me what I'm doing wrong in my life, how I'm on the wrong path, telling me all the things I need to change in order to be happy. Here's the 10 things you need to do to find happiness. Here's what you need to do to become a more spiritual person. Here's what you need to do to find nirvana. Here's what you need to do. It's always work. Things to do, things you're not doing, things you're doing wrong, things you got to fix. Then I get into this mode, and then I start thinking, I'm a worthless piece of shit because I am not where I want to be. I'm not where these gurus are telling me I should be. I'm not as spiritual as those people are. Like, I feel worthless, right? I start getting into that frame of mind. And I've tried to break myself free from that successfully in many ways over the last few years. And it's by not following these types of people who are telling me the way that it is, right? So I've been really listening to a lot of indigenous people. I listen to a lot of what the natives have to say on many continents about the nature of reality. I listen to what the natives have to say about God, about creation, about the great flood, about the nature of reality, because in many instances, the ancients talked about all these things. And so rather than listening to, one of those spiritual people, I want to listen to what the indigenous people have to say about it, or what the shamans have to say about it, the magic men or the medicine men from these ancient cultures, from these indigenous tribes, from the Native Americans. I want to listen to all of these people, because these people aren't telling me how to live my life. They're not telling me what to do. They're just saying, this is what our ancestors told us about the nature of reality, about God, about our creation, and about spirit. And so these are the types of things that I listen to nowadays on podcasts and on YouTube. I've been listening to a lot of Donald Hoffman, if you're interested. He talks a lot about the illusion of reality. He's a super interesting guy to listen to. I've been listening and learning about Rosicrucianism with Dr. Robert Gilbert. A lot of these people, I'm not interested necessarily in hearing perspectives of just, some spiritual cat lady who had a weird supernatural event in her life and now can predict the future. Like, I'm open to hearing from her as well, but I understand that that's just her perspective, right? And so I'm interested in these people talking about these spiritual concepts like Rosicrucianism, Hermeticism, Gnosticism, these scholars that sort of dedicate their life to understanding what these concepts are. And I like to listen to their perspectives and their cosmologies, and then sort of apply it with my own Madowan's human filter and sort of apply it to my own life, right? I've been listening to a lot of conversations about ancient history and ancient aliens, perhaps, and the mysteries behind the pyramids. I've been listening to a lot of Graham Hancock. He has a show on Netflix called Ancient Apocalypse, where he talks about these sort of alternative perspective, alternative theories to the building of the pyramids. I've been listening to a lot of Matthew LaCroix, who's a really interesting guy who sort of follows in Graham Hancock's footsteps of these alternative theories, these monolithic structures. How did they build them? How did they carve them? How did they transport them hundreds of miles? How did they create them with mathematics and geometry and architectural and cosmological knowledge that these people simply didn't have at that time? All of these things really interest me and fascinate me. And I also enjoy listening to Egyptologists and straight up mainstream scholars, because I also want to hear their perspective on how they think the pyramids were built with slaves and methods of using pulley systems and ramps. And I want to hear what the mainstream guys have to say as well. And then I want to come to my own conclusions. We often have to understand that all of these things, a lot of this knowledge is based on someone's interpretation of what the writings on the tablets say, or the writings on the scrolls, or the writings on the cylinders, these clay cylinders and stuff that they find in these ancient caves in the Mesopotamia and the Iraq, Iran, Afghanistan, Turkey, Egypt, these sorts of areas where these ancient tablets are found. We often are told by the educational system or by teachers or professors or scholars that this is what we believe, this is the truth, right? This is how we interpreted it, and this is the fact. And oftentimes as humans, we don't question those things, right? We don't question their authority. We don't question the interpretation. But the interpretation of these ancient scriptures and texts from not just the Bible, but the Nag Hammadi Library and the Deep Sea Scrolls, the Dead Sea Scrolls, these types of things are all open to interpretation, right? And so there's a lot of talk around things like the Mesopotamians. The Mesopotamians were the earliest known writings in human civilization, was about 6,000 years ago, was these Mesopotamians near Iran. And so they talked about how, I lost my train of thought there. They talked about how the Anunnaki came and created mankind, and there's this talk about how the Anunnaki came from a planet called Nibiru, and how they came to Earth and created humans for the sole purpose of doing work, essentially creating them as slaves for purposes of mining gold, because they needed gold for their atmosphere on the planet Nibiru, planet X, planet 9, whatever you want to call it. And once I started digging deeper into these things, I started realizing that all of these were based on one translation by one man. His name was Zechariah Sitchin. And all of the other scholars, all of the other experts in ancient Sumerian and ancient Akkadian and Mesopotamian languages and stuff, none of them talk about Nibiru. None of them talk about gold. This is all something that this guy, Zechariah Sitchin, has taken some wild liberties, in my opinion, in his interpretation of these tablets. Now, who's to say he's right or wrong? Right? This is just simply his interpretation. The same thing could be said with these Bible translations, right? We say that this is the translation, this is what God meant, but we have to understand just the nature of language, that oftentimes words, even in the English language, have many different meanings, depending on who you're asking, right? Or the situation. There's a lot of context behind some of these words. So when you're interpreting things like the Bible or these ancient texts and scrolls from wherever, it's open to wild interpretation, right? And at the end of the day, we're kind of just guessing, using our best guesses intellectually and scholarly, trying to figure out what they meant when they were saying certain things, right? But not being locked into these definitions or these etymologies, realizing that there are often broader ways of saying certain words. For example, that popped into my head was Satan. Satan is immediately the bad guy, the devil, Beelzebub, evil incarnate, right? But Satan, when you look at the word, it simply means opponent. It translates to opponent, right? It's sort of this more neutral idea of just sort of a push and pull opponent, somebody who's there to sort of be some sort of a resistance to us in our lives. There is no evil connotation to it. So that's why I like looking into these translations and the etymology of words and things of that nature, because it sort of paints a broader picture of what we're talking about here. Things that oftentimes, pastors and preachers never talked about in the churches that I went to, or these scholars often don't say like, hey, this is just our best guess. They come at it from a place of like, we're the smart ones. We know what we're talking about. You guys don't know what you're talking about. This is the way and the truth, and that's that. But I think that is rather closed-minded, and I think that doesn't come from a very scientific standpoint of being open to hearing other perspectives and applying the scientific method to it, and seeing if it holds water or not, and being open to different perspectives, just like we've been talking about this whole time. So I also like listening to a lot of Richard Rohr. I was recently introduced to him via Nathan, so shout out to Nathan, thank you. Richard Rohr is like he's a monk. He's I'm trying to think of the order that he comes from. He's a monk, and he talks about things from a Christian perspective, but it's he interprets the Bible in a very open way that most Christians, I believe, don't look at it that way. And so I enjoy hearing things from his perspective because it's a very Christian, Christ-centered perspective, but he also allows for other spiritual concepts to come into his understanding of how things work. And so that's just another example of somebody that I enjoy listening to because I just want to hear all the perspectives, right? And then come to my own conclusions and not judge other people for their conclusions. Rather, just thank the universe for sending them my way. Thank you for showing me this other perspective. Because at the end of the day, I think that's what the all that is. Divinity is experiencing everything simultaneously. When the ancients tell us that everything is one, I tend to take it literally, metaphorically and literally simultaneously. So wrap your mind around that. If you're enjoying these conversations like I am, thank you for joining me. Feel free to share this on social media if it resonated with you. I always accept donations, and I'm so thankful for everybody who reciprocates in that way. I appreciate you. There's information on that below if you're interested. And I just want to mention again, if you're still listening, hi, love you. Let me know if you're interested in doing a monthly meeting sort of a thing via Zoom, talking to other like-minded misfits about spirituality and aliens, and we'll see where the conversation goes there. So let me know if you're interested, and I will set up something like that. And thank you for everybody for following and subscribing to me on whatever platform you're listening to this on. I appreciate you. I love you. Until next time, end transmission.